What's good, everyone? It's your favorite officer, Sergeant. Be safe. Today, we're diving into a wild ride through the school and tackling some serious issues. Let's keep it real. Let's follow young Malik Mystic as he meets with treacherous Tony.
Yo, Tony, what's poppin' with these pills? You trying to be the new doctor in town?
Just a little something to take the edge off, Malik. You want to feel like you're floating on a cloud? Pretty soon, all the kids in his school are going to come to me for pills.
Whoa, I'm feeling like I just drank Grandma's secret potion. I'm lit.
Malik? You look like you just came from a family reunion where they ran out of food. What's going on?
I'm lit.
Malik, you're not yourself. We need to get you to the nurse before you start dancing like it's nobody's business.
Oh my god.
It must be the stuff I got from treacherous Tony.
What?
Drugs. I hate drugs.
Mr. Powell, Malik is acting really strange. I think he's been hitting the wrong kind of snacks.
Sergeant, be safe. We're glad you're here. We need to handle this before it turns into a not-so-funny episode of school drama.
Looks like we've got a situation at the school. Malik's got some bad vibes in him, and we need to find out where it came from.
Let's roll, partner. Time to show these wannabe gangsters that we don't play. Let's mount up. It's time we get them. Let's go.
All right, Clay, time for some tactical moves. We're about to crash this party like we're the last ones to leave the cookout.
Uh-oh. It's the safety squad. I thought we were just having a little chill time.
You're under arrest for dealing illegal substances. This isn't a club, Tony.
Nice try. But I'm built like a fridge. And I'm not letting you slide out.
All right, fam. Let's talk about the dangers of drugs. They might seem cool, but they can turn you into a walking meme. Nobody wants that.
But what if someone offers you drugs?
Great question. Always say no. Keep your head clear and your dreams even clearer. You weren't born to be a cautionary tale.
Thanks, Sergeant. Be safe. Next time, I'll just stick to my video games and TikTok dances.
Stay safe, stay smart, and remember, if you see something suspicious, call your local hero. Until next time, keep it lit.
And don't forget, treacherous Tony and his crew ended up going to jail. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
The best advice anyone ever gave me was 2 words. You can't. And you know what my response was? 2 words. Watch me.
And we're live in Maine on big screen. Shout out to everyone who's watching the show today. Today's is recorded. This is going to be another recorded episode because I got something going on both Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week. Well, Wednesday's passed by the time you watch this. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, and your favorite baker's favorite baker, Coach Clee, coming at you. Yes, Ecclesiastes 3:02. If you open up the crimes code, you'll see yours truly. I'm the coldest code switching detective. Yes, I'm King 360. You guys know what that is. 3 miles with a 60-pound weight vest, and you spell my name CLEE, which stands for Continuing Law Enforcement Edutainment, because we don't entertain, we educate throughout the entire process, and we're not going to fall short. This is the podcast Black and Blue, which is the podcast just for you. We go live weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. When we go live with a special guest, whether they're rookie season or retiree, and we talk about their training experiences and publications if they're law enforcement or first responder. And so I got a special show lined up for you today. I know we've all talked about trauma. We've all talked about sleep deprivation, and, you know, getting a good night's sleep is like a dream come true for most of us now. So we're going to talk about how we can do that. So I got a special guest. Her name's Dr. Leah Kaylor. Her book already came out, and we're going to discuss that and getting better sleep and dealing with things and being a first responder and getting into all that. But before that, yes, this show is streamed on 5 different platforms, maybe even 7 by the time it's uploaded. We're on 2 on Facebook, 3 on Facebook, 2 on YouTube, 1 on Spotify, 1 on LinkedIn, and maybe somewhere else as well. So make sure you guys tag, like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends, tell all your family about us, tell us to join. We're also going to be uploaded. I did say it on Spotify, but this is sponsored by One Way Publishing, the book publishing company, the entertainment publishing company. Also, it sponsors the podcast Black and Blue, and Starting to Be Safe, which is also on YouTube as well. So if you haven't already done so, check his cartoons out. They're educational and they're entertaining, and we have a lot of fun. They're also he has his own channel, so make sure you guys subscribe to that. All right, so I've been a little rusty. Haven't done this in a while, but it's still always good to bring things to you. You guys know I'm still working full-time detective, so therefore the cases aren't stopping. They're actually getting more intensified. So as the more things happen, the more things are kind of getting delayed here. But we're still going to bring you the show. Still going to bring you the latest content of what's available. Some of you guys have already seen our latest guest on a couple other podcasts. She's making headlines throughout. I've seen her on a lot of the mainstream law enforcement podcasts lately. She's going to be airing on this one today. Want to make sure I cover all bases. I got all that. Yes, I did. All right, perfect. You guys talked about sleep deprivation. So I'm going to get rid of that intro video here. And we're going to jump into an explainer video. You know how we do on this podcast. The explainer video for first responders, working shift work, not being able to maintain a schedule, a sleep schedule, a diet schedule, just because, you know, you get called out for overtime, you work overtime, you work days, nights, rotational, you get called out for court. It's very difficult. Then you have family that has games and events and things that you got to show to, holidays. It just gets very chaotic. And so therefore, what's the one thing that suffers? Our sleep. And when sleep suffers, then it's everything else is a trickling effect. It affects our health, it affects our brain, it affects everything that we do in life. And we're going to talk about that here. We're going to got the explainer video, and after that we're going to jump right into the interview, because you guys came to learn more about that and not about this. So here's the explainer video. We're going to jump right into it. All right, make sure you guys tag, like, share, get your questions, comments in the comment section. They still will be acknowledged, even though this is recorded, like I said, but those comments will be acknowledged. So let's get them.
Crisis. Addressing sleep deprivation in law enforcement. Sleep deprivation is an insidious epidemic that has infiltrated the ranks of law enforcement, leading to dire consequences for officers and the communities they serve. As critical first responders, police officers face unique challenges that exacerbate chronic fatigue, irregular shift patterns, long hours, and the psychological toll of their work. This thesis explores the extensive ramifications of sleep deprivation, including heightened risks of mental illness, chronic pain, heart disease, and traffic fatalities. Through an in-depth analysis, we argue for immediate systemic reforms to prioritize officer wellness and mitigate the dangerous effects of sleep deprivation. In a world that reveres productivity and vigilance, the pervasive issue of sleep deprivation in law enforcement often goes unnoticed, despite its profound implications. Officers, tasked with protecting public safety, frequently operate under a cloud of fatigue, with over 90% reporting chronic tiredness. The urgency of addressing this matter cannot be overstated, as inadequate sleep not only threatens officer health but significantly impacts community safety. To understand the full scope of this epidemic, we must explore its causes, consequences, and the necessary reforms to promote a healthier work environment for our law enforcement personnel. The nature of sleep deprivation in law enforcement. The demands of law enforcement work create a perfect storm for sleep deprivation. Officers are subjected to irregular schedules and extended hours, often leading to inconsistent sleep patterns. This chapter examines the prevalence of fatigue among officers, highlighting the systemic issues that contribute to widespread sleep deprivation. With many officers obtaining less than the recommended 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep per night, it becomes clear that the profession is in dire need of an intervention. Health consequences of sleep deprivation. The repercussions of sleep deprivation extend beyond mere tiredness. They encompass a range of serious health issues. This chapter delves into the connection between sleep disorders and mental health, illustrating how chronic fatigue elevates the risks of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. Furthermore, the links between sleep deprivation and chronic conditions such as cardiovascular disease, obesity, chronic pain, and dementia are explored, reinforcing the critical need for a proactive approach to officer wellness. Impacts on public safety. Fatigue among officers poses significant risks not only to their well-being, but also to public safety. Drowsy driving is a pressing concern, with nearly half of officers admitting to falling asleep at the wheel. This chapter analyzes how sleep deprivation impairs judgment, reaction times, and physical abilities, essential skills for effective policing. By drawing attention to the alarming statistics surrounding traffic fatalities and performance errors, we underscore the urgent need for reform, the importance of sleep in officer wellness. While wellness initiatives in law enforcement have expanded, sleep remains an overlooked component of officer health. This chapter advocates for a more comprehensive understanding of wellness that includes prioritizing sleep as a fundamental aspect of overall well-being. By examining the historical context of wellness programs in law enforcement, we emphasize the necessity of integrating sleep health into existing frameworks. Strategies for reform. Correcting the pervasive issue of sleep deprivation requires systemic change within law enforcement agencies. This chapter outlines actionable strategies that leaders can implement, including limiting working hours, monitoring total hours worked, and fostering an environment that prioritizes rest. Recommendations such as providing designated sleep spaces during shifts and implementing policies to track outside employment are explored. By embracing an open-minded approach to wellness,
All right, and hearing that snippet, I want you to keep all that in mind while working shift work, being tired while on duty, being aggravated, all the things that were discussed, all the magnitude of the things that were discussed in that training video, alluding to the different complexities on how sleep deprivation allows officers, first responders, law enforcement officers to actually not be in as much total control as they would like. You know, every day you show up to work, you got to bring your A game. So keep that all in mind as we go into this interview. All right. And get your comments and questions ready, because we're going to get to the interview now. We have the licensed clinical professional and prescribing psychologist, the FBI sleep experts. He's author of If Sleep Were a Drug, which actually came out October 1st. And that's why we're airing the show now, because the book's already out. So you don't have to wait for it. The book's right there. Make sure I get that on there. I got my copy. Make sure you guys get yours on Amazon. Right now, it just came out the first, like I just said. She's the FBI sleep expert psychologist and sleep trauma expert, Dr. Leah Kaylor. Dr. Leah Kaylor, I'm going to bring the recording up right now. You guys. And we're back live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you guys for tuning in. Another episode of Black and Blue. I got a special guest right here. We got Dr. Leah Kaylor. Dr. Kaylor, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and things that you got going on right now, please?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. So in a nutshell, my name is Dr. Leah Kaylor. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and a prescribing psychologist. I've been with the FBI now for over 6 years, and I am widely recognized as their sleep expert. So much so that I decided to write a book about it. So it's coming out here on October 1st, 2025, and it's called If Sleep Were a Drug.
There we go. And as you see, it's scrolling below. I can't wait to get into it because one thing, when I was as younger as toddlers, I hated taking the naps. I hated when it was time to go to bed. I loved the weekend because I could stay up as late as possible, even though I probably passed out at probably like 10:30 or something. I don't know. But now the older we get, the more we're all in this profession as first responders, law enforcement, military, whatever it may be. Sleep is necessary and we actually crave it. And sometimes it's hard to obtain because of shift work, it's hard to actually, when you are off and have downtime, it's hard to get. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because I would love to learn more about sleep in itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will give you all my best tips, tricks, and tools in this short amount of time that we have here today.
Gotcha. But first and foremost, what got you into wanting to be a first responder and kind of catering to first responders as far as on this topic in itself?
Sure. So I will try and make it short and sweet. I kind of knew that I was always interested in forensics. Okay. And so way back when I started with a shadowing experience of a psychologist and a psychiatrist at a maximum security all male prison. Okay. And I thought, oh, like how exciting. This is wonderful. What a cool experience for me still as a student. And I thought, wow, like I this is so cool. I can't wait to go and do this. And then, fast forward, like I'm there for 6 weeks. And afterwards, I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is not going to be my career. This is far too anxiety provoking. Like this is not sustainable. Right. And then I felt like super disappointed in myself thinking like, I can't cut it. I can't cut it in prison. And, my mom was like, Leah, it's just as important to know what it is that you do want as what it is that you don't want. So right. I kept trying other things. I've done a lot of therapy with individuals who have been sexually abused, whether as an adult or a child. Okay. And that was really interesting to me. Then like on the flip side, I did a lot of work with individuals who have been convicted of sex crimes. I've also done a fair amount of work with individuals categorized as sexually violent predators, which I thought might also be my career, but like just didn't feel like the greatest fit. So it's kind of like a Goldilocks. So eventually my third and final try was the Bureau. And I was an intern with the Bureau for several years. And then I became full-time. Okay. And I've been their psychologist full-time for 6 years. And the reason that like sleep kind of evolved was during my residency at the Memphis VA Medical Center, which is your final year in your PhD. Like they're giving you tons of experience, want you to be really well-rounded until they put you out into the world to practice on your own. And one of the many rotations that I got while I was there was the sleep clinic. And can't remember if I was actually interested in it or not, but so incredibly grateful that it did happen for me. I learned how to treat insomnia and nightmares and people struggling with wearing their CPAP and just like you name it. And so it really broadened my view of how many people are struggling with sleep, how many people don't know that there are ways that you can improve your sleep. Okay. And then once I got to the Bureau full time, my supervisor had asked me, okay, Leah, so what's going to be your thing? And I said, well, I don't know. Everybody, all of the mental health professionals there bring something special to the table. And I said, well, why don't we do sleep? Because I just got off a sleep rotation clinic, but also when it comes to mental health and it comes to stigma, like we're getting better and better about that, especially as a society. But when you add on the layer of law enforcement, add on the layer of this most elite law enforcement agency in the world, I thought, well, even in society, sometimes I'll say I'm a psychologist and people just kind of like turn around and walk away. They ask me if I'm going to write my dissertation on them, this and the other. No, please, I already did that once and I will not be doing another one. But, people get really worked up when I say I'm a psychologist. So what I thought was I'll do this sneaky like foot in the door thing where I will talk about sleep issues. I'll talk about how to improve sleep issues. And basically, once I do that and people learn I'm not that scary, I'm not going to ask you to lay on my couch and tell me about your childhood, that we'll open up other things. And that's kind of exactly what happened. So I did this foot in the door trick of let's talk about sleep. And then my other specialty is trauma, which, go hand in hand. And I'm so incredibly grateful that these are the two specialties that I have because you almost can't disentangle them whenever it comes to law enforcement, first responder, like military veteran populations. They're just so intricately tied.
Right. Thank you for explaining that. You kind of
Yeah.
touched on the next question I was going to ask. How they go hand in hand, like you just said,
do.
about sleep and trauma. How does one affect the other? And of course, being a first responder, that's our job, is to deal in trauma. Whether we show up when things are chaotic, we're here to fix it. We fix it, but then we take on the trauma from showing up, or the things that we experience while being there. How does that affect us as an individual, as a human being, and the people that we're around, our family?
Right. And I think that it's so important for us to just kind of take a moment to acknowledge this, because when we are a first responder and we've been in this bubble for a long time, we forget what it's like, what other people, civilians experience, like a librarian or like a banker. Like they may never come across anything like this.
Right.
And yet you are asked to do this day in and day out. And for you guys, like there may be some warning as to what it is that you're walking into. There may be no warning as what it is that you're walking into. And so there's just so much potential for traumatic exposure over and over and over again. And so I think that it's so important that we talk about these two hand in hand. And that's a big piece of what I do in the book, is like, I'm like, hey, this is a book for sleep. However, there may be underlying issues. And that's why it's so important to talk about, because when I think about sleep, it's kind of like this vicious circle with lots of different things, but specifically as we talk about it in the context here of mental health. So if you are traumatized during the day and you are not able to process it, and then the way that you are, maybe quote unquote processing it on your own is thinking, rethinking, kind of ruminating about it. You're having a hard time shutting your brain off. Maybe you're using alcohol to quote unquote sleep and wind down. And so that is going to set you up for a poor night's sleep. If you're sleeping poorly, that is the time in which your brain kind of emotionally recalibrates, kind of takes away the sting of painful memories, and helps you kind of be ready and raring to go the next day. Well, if you're not sleeping well, that's setting you up for poor conditions. And then we do it all again the next day. So imagine, getting called out again and again and again, continuing to add more vicarious trauma onto what it is that you're already experiencing. So we've got this cumulative effect. Again, maybe your coping skills are or are not effective. And we just have this vicious cycle going on and on. So I like to say this, and this is very specific to my population. I'd say, again, within the Bureau, we have lots of wonderful mental health professionals, and I get a lot of referrals from them of, hey, Leah, someone's having sleep issues. Can you take them on your caseload? I'm like, yeah, of course, no problem. Send them over. And then I start talking to them, and like 9 times out of 10, like after just a short period of time, and I'm like, okay, this looks like a sleep issue. And yes, of course, you are struggling with sleep, but it's more so a symptom or a manifestation of untreated anxiety, depression, stress, post-traumatic injury. So there's a lot of that's fueling the sleep issues. And so I am incredibly grateful to have the skill set that I have, where I work with people on both the trauma and then also the sleep, so that we can get you on a better track faster and quicker than just addressing one or the other alone.
Gotcha. Thank you for explaining that as well. And it's a trend that I've seen. I've been being in former military, being in law enforcement for about 20 years now. I've seen guys leave the job early because they just were burnt out. The newer officers are coming on, first responders as well. They're coming on to the job, and working shift work, especially when you're newer, you're working for a department that works 12 hours. You got 12 hours, 7 to 7 a.m. Then you got 7 to 7 p.m. with some rotate within a month, some rotate within 2 weeks. So already your sleep's interrupted naturally just from the job itself. Then you're seeing trauma. You're seeing maybe vehicle accidents that are horrific. You're dealing with families that are being torn apart for whatever reason. You see natural disasters of a storm comes through and a tree just separates a house in half, and you see the aftermath of that may involve some death and destruction. And you deal with it. Like you said, the coping skills may be alcohol, because that naturally it helps you turn the switch off. Trust me, I know, I'm guilty of it myself from working patrol work, that when you come home, you just want to unwind. You don't want to talk about anything. You just want that moment. And the easiest way to actually is to have choir practice and decompress. And of course, that starts bad habits, because then you need more and more. And then eventually, like you said, and I know from experience as well, your sleep's interrupted, where you're working overnight, then you come home, you sleep during the day, You probably get 3 or 4 hours tops of sleep. Then you're back up again because you don't want to waste the day. You got to get stuff. The car still needs inspected. The house needs clean, and then you had to go back to work again. And after a career of doing this, I've seen retired guys. I'm saying all this to say I've seen retired guys actually, when they decompress and unload, they have the nightmares. And they don't know how to deal with the nightmares, so they're still staying up because they don't want to go to sleep. How would you, what kind of suggestions would you say for any of the first responders that are experiencing that?
I'm so glad you asked this question. And like, for those of you who are listening, this was not a setup. We did not talk about this ahead of time. There is actually a treatment for nightmares. And I this is like a huge public service announcement that I'm trying to do with my book and just on podcasts, because yes, when I was at the VA, and this was my first foray into sleep issues, because I had people who were experiencing nightmares like so severe that they would go to the emergency room because they thought they were having a cardiac event in the middle of the night. Turns out, no, that's not the case. It's just these extreme nightmares. Same thing. I had veterans who would, what we call sleep avoidance. They were just so scared to sleep, to put it off. And, that's because it's scary. It's this state of vulnerability, and it's the potential to have nightmares. So people don't realize this. And I think it's really important that we touch upon this, and we can go as deeply or as shallowly as you like. But we have a treatment called imagery rehearsal therapy, IRT, and this is wonderful for recurrent nightmares. So that nightmare that happens over and over and over again, maybe there are slightly different variations, but it's kind of like that same scenario. We can train the brain to overcome this type of nightmare. And I've used this in the VA, I've used this with civilians, I've used this with my special agents, and it is wonderfully effective. It does take a little bit of time because, as you can imagine, whenever it comes to nightmares and this unprocessed trauma and stress, because let me back up, let me say, at night, for a normal, average, healthy sleeper, the brain is trying to emotionally recalibrate. It is processing through what it is that we have gone through. It is taking, and this is just really super interesting, and I'm like very nerdy, as if you couldn't tell, that when we are in this REM dream state, for a normal, average, healthy sleeper, the level of noradrenaline, which is just a brain stress chemical, should be nearly zero. And that is kind of like the only time, which is really cool, that this happens. And so the brain kind of acts as this really skilled mental health therapist, if you will, and it brings up things that we need to process while this brain stress hormone is essentially a zero. So we can work through these things. We can kind of, I don't know about you, and maybe our listeners can relate to this, but like everything seems like maybe really scary or this or that, or like really amped up, and then you kind of sleep on it, and the next day you kind of just have like more clarity, like you're like, okay, maybe that wasn't so bad. Well, that's thank you to REM sleep. And when we aren't getting good REM sleep, and especially whenever it comes to folks who are very like amped up and they're experiencing a lot of traumatic events, and that this cumulative stress and trauma is just adding up, that the brain can't get to that state of very low brain noradrenaline. So instead, the adrenaline is very high. And so the brain is trying to process through, it's trying to do what it normally does. And yet we end up with this nightmare. And then we wake up, we're very distressed. It's very hard to fall back asleep. Well, here's the thing. The brain does not like open-ended things. It likes to complete tasks. It likes to check things off its to-do list. And so it's like, all right, well, we'll just try again tonight. And we'll do it again. And that's kind of why, that's what we believe is happening whenever we have these repetitive nightmares, is that the brain is trying again to process through what it needs to process through. If we don't do things to bring our stress chemicals back down, well, they're going to continue to stay elevated. Again, just think about all the stressors that we've got going on, whether that's organizational pressures or societal pressures, or like trying to balance work and family, and like the demands of being a shift worker, like all these different things, let alone never knowing what it's going to be when you respond to each new call. So there's just so much stress and cortisol and adrenaline just pumping through the body, that if that isn't brought down to a level that is manageable, then we're going to continue to have this process where we aren't able to effectively emotionally calibrate as we should.
Gotcha.
Yes. So that's what's happening. That's what we believe is happening. And that's why we believe that these nightmares are happening, especially these repetitive nightmares. So with imagery rehearsal therapy, and I'll just kind of give it to you in a nutshell, It's a beautifully simple and very powerful tool. And what it is essentially you'd work with a mental health professional and talk about this repetitive nightmare, what's happening, and you tell the therapist so they have a good idea. Like, I'll ask people, like, bring me into your dream, like, tell me what happens, like, give me the 5 senses. And once I have an idea of the original nightmare, then it's very simple. We talk about what would be a different ending. So it's still going to start the same. It still may have like a similar middle, but then what would be a positive or a neutral ending? And so this very much is a collaborative process because I want the client to come up with their own ideas.
Right.
So I'll give you an idea without giving too much confidentiality away of working with an individual who would have a nightmare every night of being in a plane. And this was a part of his way back when he was active duty, what he would always do. Now, he had never been in a plane crash, but this was just kind of this manifestation of all this stress and unprocessed trauma, like coming out where like the plane would crash every night in the dream.
Yeah.
So we're working together and I'm like, okay, so what would be a neutral or positive or empowering ending? Like, what can we come up with together? And one fun thing about dreams is like, they don't play by the rules of reality. Like they can be wild and crazy and bizarre and whatever. So, you know, it needs to resonate with the dreamer. So it could be, you know, you get out your manual and you figure out exactly what's wrong and you get control over the plane. Or maybe you put on like a parachute and you jump out the back 007 style. Or maybe you sprout wings and you like grow into a creature that flies, like whatever, it doesn't matter. But it has to be something that resonates with the dreamer. So once we come up with a good one, we still have like a similar beginning, middle, and then we change the ending. And so now that we have this new package, very simple and easy, this person just starts to, during the daytime, in a quiet, private environment, practice this only the new dream for about 15 to 20 minutes. And we do this over and over and over in the daytime. And as this happens, eventually the brain at night, and this will take a little while, you have to stay consistent with the practice, but I've had great results with this. After just a few weeks, eventually the brain will kind of like switch tapes in the middle of the night. And then you can start to sleep through the dream because it starts to take on the new ending. And then eventually people just report that they no longer even remember having the dream or just don't even have the dream altogether. And so it's really simple and yet like mind-blowingly powerful. And I think that just so few people know that it's an option for them. So again, it's called imagery rehearsal therapy, IRT.
I love it. It does sound simple, kind of like going through meditation throughout the day, just a couple times, about 10-15 minutes or so, just kind of going through processing your thoughts. So that way, when the subconscious does hit when you're sleeping, it automatically takes over. And I can see that, of course, developing a new habit, developing your brain waves and all. And I'm no expert, but it does take a while just developing a habit in itself. And so once it's incorporated, I could see how it's very helpful in getting you through the night, whether it's for the first responders that are brand new or the retirees that are going through it. And of course, first responders, I say it all the time, we love to suffer in silence. We're doing a better job now of reaching out. And these are options on reaching out and options to overcome what we believe are very traumatic, what are high hurdles to get over by ourselves. And actually, you made it make sense so much to the point where I don't want to diminish it, but it sounds so much easier to go through the process.
It is, you know, and that's why I like, you know, feel like this is kind of like my life's purpose is like to tell people about this because you don't, you know, we should be sleeping every night. And, you know, as much as you want to push it off, like some of my veterans who want to like stay awake as long as possible to avoid that scary nightmare, sleep will come for you, whether you like it or not. And, you know, and that's like a whole nother like sidebar is like when you push off sleep, then when the brain tries to recapture that sleep, then things might go off the rails even more because it's trying to rebound and trying to get various different sleep cycles and pieces that it has missed before.
Yes.
But, you know, I like to kind of explain it as like your brain has been wired in a particular way to go through this nightmare, you know, depending upon if it's been weeks, months, years, decades for some folks. And so it will take time. And this is very important is just, I say this, good sleep doesn't happen overnight. it really is a process. But like you said, this is simple, this is easy, and it really does work. This imagery rehearsal therapy is a first line recommendation for people who are struggling with repetitive nightmares. And it doesn't, and again, we are only practicing this new empowering dream. So it's not going to be asking you to think about this trauma over and over and over again. It's really shifting and, like I like to say, rewiring the brain.
Love it. Love it. And so I know that you've spoken with and worked with military veterans along with law enforcement officers, and not putting too much out there. I had a guest on the show who's prior military, and he believes that the military is leaps and bounds ahead of law enforcement by way of dealing with the trauma that's perceived or experienced through the job. And this individual has worked mainly, of course, full-time military, part-time law enforcement, so has experiences on both sides. And I'm 20 years removed from the military. And so therefore, the old ways is, you just, like I said before, you just suck it up, deal with it, get over it. He said the military is leaps and bounds. Would you agree with that assessment, or do you think it's still neck and neck in your opinion?
That's a good question. So whenever I talk about my experience with the military, it's been at the VA. So while I did have active duty, I also had a very big caseload of veterans. And for whatever reason, my caseload was very heavily stacked for Vietnam veterans. So folks who were drafted a long time ago, and this still really stuck with them. So, and then my career has been with the Bureau for the past 6 years. So I'd say I don't know that I can necessarily give a strong opinion, just because my military experience is more so VA and more heavily weighted towards veterans. However, I would just say that I appreciate podcasts like this and just the conversations that we're having to talk about, hey, it's okay not to be okay. And people are probably sick of that phrase at this point in time, but there are things to do that can help you. There are things that, just like what we talked about, IRT, it is not crazy intensive. It is not crazy traumatic. You know, if you get started today, think about where you might be in, let's just say, for example, 1 month, 2 months. Like, wouldn't you like to know these things now and at least give them a shot and just see where you can be improving? Yeah. I would think so. I would believe so. I know the first responders that are on here that like to self-medicate, at least through alcohol, or maybe not even that, just a melatonin or any kind of teas that they offer to help you sleep through it. And the ones that do admit are vulnerable enough to share their experiences, or I may get maybe an hour more sleep. I still wake up groggy. I'm waking up more tired than I was the night before. I just want to, I just want a good night's sleep like we used to get. I wanted the brain dump. And so they actually go to the doctor and they get prescribed medications. Can you speak to that? Can you say if there's any pros or cons with any of that? I can. So you said several different things and I want to touch upon there. So I'm going to like ping pong around. But I'm glad that you asked this because I didn't really touch upon it earlier, but I'm a prescribing psychologist too, which means that there's not a ton of us out there, but it means that I can also prescribe mental health medications. So sleep medications such as Z drugs like our Ambien, Sonata, our Doras, I can prescribe those too. So I have this kind of unique experience, and then I can talk about the psychological side, and I can also talk about the pharmacological side. So let's rewind and talk about alcohol, because that is kind of like the world's, and I'm putting this in quotes, #1 sleep aid.
I agree. Yes.
And in my book, the chapter is called "There's a Difference Between Sleeping and Passing Out." And it's so true, right? Like, alcohol is a depressant. Alcohol helps us feel sleepy. There's no doubt about that. But it is much more of a form of sedation rather than a form of natural sleep. Because whenever we're having alcohol, yes, it's going to depress brain activity, meaning that it's going to slow down the communication between neurons, which can help you feel sleepy. But then as we get into nighttime sleep, you're not going to be cycling through as you should. Alcohol is a huge suppressor of REM sleep, which, as we talked about before, REM sleep is really important for that emotional recalibration, for taking the sting out of traumatic things that we've experienced. So if we're having alcohol, then it's suppressing REM sleep. And so we're really doing ourselves a disservice there. Also, our sleep is just going to be really fragmented. It's going to be really shallow. We're going to be so much more perceptive to sounds that maybe like a creaky floorboard or like a beep might not normally wake us up. Because of alcohol and being in the shower state of sleep, things like that will be much more likely to yank us out of sleep. So nonetheless, alcohol is just a really, really poor substitution for natural sleep the way that it was intended. So
Right.
I'll put that out there. I think that everyone probably knows that, but it's important as a reminder to put that out there for folks.
Mhm.
Then you asked about melatonin. So for people who are not jet lagged, working shift work, or have some type of circadian rhythm disorder, and that's kind of a whole nother side conversation. But for people who are not, basically jet lagged or doing shift work, melatonin is not really made for you.
Gotcha.
Melatonin does not cause sleep. It's not a sleep aid, even though that's how it's marketed. It does not cause sedation. Basically, what it does is it tells the brain it's time for sleep, but it doesn't cause sleep. It doesn't initiate sleep. It just lets the brain know, hey, it's time now. That's what melatonin does. So whenever people take it nightly, there's research out there to show that it doesn't do anything more than help you fall asleep approximately 4 minutes quicker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And with regard to sleep quality, it only helps improve sleep quality by about 2%.
Oh, wow. Wow. Now you
Yeah.
just learned something.
Yes. So I like to do this myth busting because I think a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, melatonin. Well, here's a couple of other problems. And you kind of alluded to this like grogginess. When it comes to melatonin and your body does naturally make it. It does every single night. But what you would buy on a shelf is normally significantly higher doses than what your body would ever make. So sometimes people do wake up feeling kind of groggy, foggy, kind of like this sleep hangover. That may potentially be attributed to the dosage of which melatonin you're taking. So
Gotcha.
I don't normally take melatonin. I recently went overseas and I had consulted with someone getting like a jet lag plan made for myself. And so they were like, oh, do you want to try melatonin? I'm like, okay, sure. Why not? I'll give it a go. I don't want to get jet lag because I'm very sensitive. And they had told me, okay, so when you go shopping for melatonin, look for anywhere from 0.5, so half a milligram, or up to 3 milligrams.
Okay.
I'm telling you, coach, I went to 3 different stores to try and find that low of a milligram. It was so hard. It was so hard. All of the ones that are easily and readily available on the shelf at your local big box store are much, much higher. And so, it's something that really surprised me. And I imagine that, again, it's all about giving people good information. So again, unless you're a shift worker or going through like a jet lag plan, melatonin is really not made for you. Also, there are lots of widely discrepancies whenever it comes to what's actually in the melatonin with regard to like what's on the label.
Right.
There's studies out there to show that sometimes it's significantly less, but more times it's far, far, far more than what's on the label, which is concerning. And then also too, just the hygiene standards of the facility in which it's being made. So sometimes, and this is not solely and strictly related to sleep aids, but it could be, your vitamins, minerals, herbs, supplements, that sometimes there are things found in there just due to like unsanitary conditions. So arsenic, lead, mercury, things that you certainly do not want to be ingesting. So
Exactly.
if you're someone who's listening and you're taking melatonin nightly thinking this is going to help your sleep, maybe rewind and listen to this section again, because I promise you it's really not. Maybe just save your money. So I like to, when I give my sleep lectures, I like to show a slide, and I'm going to describe it to you so you can envision it. It's a pyramid. So at the very bottom of the pyramid, the biggest, widest foundational section is for behavioral changes. And behavioral changes would mean, are you drinking alcohol? Maybe considering more moderation. Are you drinking caffeine? Maybe considering when you are shutting that down. Do you have a wind down routine? Because we are go, 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 go. And then you want to fall face first into the bed and fall asleep immediately. Well, most of the time that ain't happening.
Right.
So the bottom foundational piece of the pyramid is all about what are behavioral things you can do to change and to better your sleep. Then as we move up one, the next is environmental. So is your mattress comfortable? Do you have a pillow that supports the type of sleeper that you are? Is your bedroom dark, cool, and quiet, especially for those trying to sleep in the daytime? You're going to have to work even harder because of traffic and construction and the guy next door mowing his lawn. You have to work harder. Then the next level up, I say if you've been doing these behavioral and environmental changes for several weeks and you're still not seeing changes, it might be time to talk to a mental health professional or a medical professional. Maybe we need to do a sleep study. Maybe there's something going on, and this is a whole nother conversation, but a ton of people, and this is very much so for the first responder community, they are struggling with obstructive sleep apnea, but they don't know. And so I think that this is important for us to circle back to in a few minutes here, but it may be important to have a sleep study because yes, you might have obstructive sleep apnea and you might not know. So that's important. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, 9 times out of 10, when I'm talking about, the first responder population, it's oftentimes untreated anxiety, depression, stress, trauma that's showing up as sleep issues. So now maybe it's time to recruit some help and see what else we can do.
Right.
Then as we move up the pyramid, then we might see some over-the-counter sleep aids. And I already told you my qualms whenever it comes to melatonin.
Right.
And there are other medications out there that are like PM, and those ones, especially when the active ingredient is diphenhydramine, which is the active ingredient in, say, for example, Benadryl, after 3 nights, it's no better than a placebo.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We're really out here fooling ourselves, first responders.
I know. That's why I had to come out and write a book, because I can only talk to so many people at once. So after 3 days, we build up such a tolerance that it's no better than a placebo. And also long-term use of medications such as that, and that's categorized as a anticholinergic. They are associated, not caused, but associated with cognitive impairment, especially in older populations. So it's concerning. There will be other things out there like magnesium. People are very excited about magnesium. However, that's a good option if you're magnesium deficient. If you're magnesium normative, yeah. So there's a few things out there like that. L-theanine is a nice option. It's not going to have any major side effects. So if that's something that people want to try out, fantastic. But really, there's not a ton of great options whenever it comes to like easily available sleep aids.
Wow.
And then to finally answer your question, the very tippy top triangle part of the pyramid is prescription sleep aids. And as I mentioned, I am a prescriber. However, I have yet during my prescribing career to prescribe any of our classics like the benzodiazepines, like the Z drugs of Ambien, Sonata, Lunesta, or our Doras. There are medications that, and we'll call it prescribing off-label because that's what it's called, but there are things that are like antidepressants that are often prescribed because a major side effect is sedation. So we'll just say, for example, something like trazodone. Trazodone is technically an antidepressant. However, it's very well known for making you sleepy. And so at very low doses, lower than what would normally be prescribed for anxiety or depression, trazodone can be a nice, safe-ish, compared to just everything. And also taking into your own lifestyle factors, who you are, what other conditions you've got going on, what other medications you're taking. But within the realm, trazodone is relatively very safe, and it can help with sedation, especially for those people who have a hard time falling asleep. So trazodone is a nice option. And we've got a couple of others that are used off label like that. But one of the things that I really want to mention is because, and I titled that chapter, There's No Magic Pill, because everybody wants a quick fix. Like when you're not sleeping well, like you desperately want sleep. Like that's all that you want. Like you'll pay any price tag for it. But when it comes to our benzodiazepines, like say, for example, an Ativan or a Xanax, or things like our Z drugs, our Ambien, our Lunesta, that they do come with side effects. So whenever it comes to our Ambien, Sonata, Lunesta, and their generics, those come with a black box warning. A lot of people don't realize that. Black box warning is that this is very, very concerning. Hey, we need to get your attention because you may be doing something on this medication that could cause serious harm or death. And people, I think, kind of like push that off.
That's for someone else, not me.
Right. No, it'll work perfectly fine for me. It's no big deal. And, here's the thing, right? And here's why it's there is that when you take something like one of those Z drugs, it does work very quickly. Normally we ask people to already be in bed and take the pill while you're already laying down in bed. But there's two things that make this very concerning. First of all is sleep behaviors that happen. And this could mean that you are sleepwalking, sleep talking, sleep cooking, sleep trying to get in your car and driving. And people, as scary as that is, people really do it. And there are lots of anecdotal stories about people going on Amazon and shopping. And like a few days later, all these packages show up at their house and they didn't know what the hell's going on. Or like sleep texting your ex, like all kinds of weird shit happens. Not for everyone, but for a select few people. Right. But it goes hand in hand with the other thing that's very problematic. And this is called anterograde amnesia. And what this is that the period between when you take that pill and the period when you wake up, like that, you kind of go dark. Yeah. And you don't really have memories for that time. And so if you were sleepwalking, sleep talking, a lot of times, especially if you live alone, which is very concerning, you may not know that you've done any of these things unless there's some type of like evidence, like, there's a pillow in the oven, or like, you left out all the food in the fridge and you left the doors open or something. Like you may not know that you've done any of these strange things. Wow. So those are the two things that make those Z drugs have a black box warning, is that it has the potential to cause you to do strange sleep related behaviors, and then also to not remember those with the anterograde amnesia. So even though it's funny and, we see it on, anecdotal things on sitcoms, that actually is extremely, extremely dangerous. Yeah. And so we need to take that very seriously, even though we can laugh about it here. It truly is quite a dangerous thing that really, truly does happen to people. So I put that out there because there really is no magic pill. And this will not happen to every single person who takes these, but I do think that it's important to know, especially if you're someone who lives alone and thinks, I'll give this a try. You may not be aware of what's happening to you at night. So those are some options. I mentioned Doras. Doras are a newer-ish class of drugs, and they are, they act on a different mechanism. So benzodiazepines and Z drugs have a similar-ish mechanism of action, just to make it simple. But Doras have a different mechanism of action, and they kind of destabilize wakefulness. And so these are newer, but the research is still kind of emerging. So that's another different option for folks. But at the end of the day, even though I give all this information and I give it all in the book too in great detail, it really is all about behavioral modifications, environmental modifications, taking care of your mental health, seeing if you need to go have a sleep study. That's really the foundation. And I know the last thing you want to do is have more work on your plate and put more work into something that you're already feeling like you're not getting any benefit out of. But really, truly, that's where the magic happens.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for explaining all of that. Giving the foundation is very important. I know touching on so many different things that I'm sitting here laughing just because I know
there's so much.
Yeah. So it's hard to imagine. I just think it's very easy to just lay down. You would think it's very easy to lay down and go to sleep and wake up and start the day. But then to actually have to go through whatever steps that the foundation, like you said, to get through the top of the pyramid, or to go through the pyramid to see where you may fall. And the treatment process is very interesting, and it's very detailed as well. Yes. I would find it, if I was hypothetically, of course, if I'm on some sort of medication where I have the amnesia process and I'm texting people from the past, I could just only imagine if it would be very polite or very not polite, for lack of a better term, and then not remembering it happened. I just find that's interesting and funny, but in retrospect as well, the dangers of that for those that the single parent that may have young kids or driving, like you said, and not remembering it. There's so many, you're putting other people at risk as well. So I mean, be cognizant of the black label warning, like you said.
Yes, absolutely. And there are lots of reports of people getting in their car, going through the drive-through, and like you would think like, oh my gosh, how's this possibly happening? And yet it's just the way in which the drug and the mechanism of action is working on the brain. And so it's really, truly incredible. But yes, this does indeed happen, and it's very scary and in reality. Yeah.
And so I know your book is coming out October 1st, and I know you highlighted a few points. With the points that you've highlighted, will they be in the book and explained in more detail, or are you kind of leaving a little of the secret sauce for us to go ahead and purchase it when October finally drops?
Listen, I've been working with this editor, and he's like, Leah, you can't add anymore. You cannot add anymore. Stop adding pages. So the book and content, and this might sound scary, but it's meant to be something that you keep forever and you pull off your shelf whenever you need it. But the book itself, as far as content goes, it's about 350 pages, and then like a ridiculous amount of citations. So what you got here is a taste tester of what is in the book. And so I talk about everything that we've talked about here, but just in much greater detail, giving you examples. And there's just so much, right? Like it's huge. And the way that I structured it is, especially because this book is written for first responders. This is who I've spent my whole career with. So I start out by kind of giving some very scary statistics, because if you're not taking sleep seriously and you have this "I'll sleep when I'm dead" attitude, I got to do a little bit to get you on board with why sleep is important and why you should be making some changes. So the first chapter is all about scary statistics and things that are happening with your body and that may impact your longevity. It may impact your health span. It may impact whether you go on to develop serious conditions that can really impact your life. And so I put that out there first, just to kind of, as a little scare tactic, like I'm not above it. Like I need you to know why sleep is so important. Yeah. And then the rest of it in that first section is what happens when we sleep, what is happening during light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. And we kind of touched on a little bit there. And then how much sleep is right for you. You know, as we sleep or as we age, like, you know, an infant compared to someone who's 68 years old, their sleep is going to look very different. So explaining why that happens. And then as we move on, I talk about sleep disruptors. So I have a whole section on sleep disruptors and things that can kind of get in our own way. So like napping, caffeine, alcohol use. Are you sleeping with the TV on? Are you sharing your bed with a partner or a child or a pet? You know, lots of different things there. I talk about using tobacco and nicotine. So different things that may be getting in your way when it comes to sleep, but also explaining the science behind, hey, maybe you heard before, don't drink alcohol before bed. Well, here's why. And if you do, here's what's going to happen to your sleep.
Right.
And then the last section of the book is all about, I want it to be like kind of a troubleshooting guide. So like I said, I want this to be a book that you keep forever and ever. You keep it on your shelf. So if things do pop up, you can pull it off. So if you're struggling with, or if you have shift work, nightmares, sleep terrors, sleep walking, sleep paralysis, restless leg, women going through menopause, there's going to be a chapter on each of these different things and more. Especially there's a huge section on obstructive sleep apnea and why these things are happening, the science behind it, what we kind of know, what are some strategies to help with this. So it's very, very comprehensive. And then lastly, I wrap up with talking to leaders and organizations about how you can lead a sleep smart organization from the top down. And so that's really what it's all about. So it's very long, it's very involved, but it's a ton of good information. So I'm so excited to share this with people.
Yeah, it sounds like you put a lot of work into it. I'm excited to get my own copy and read it. You started off by saying what used to be my mantra early on in my career, where I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm here in the adventure, the action, and then when we're all done, the camaraderie, we're all going to go out and party and drink the beers and have the alcohol, and then we're going to stay up all night enjoying ourselves, getting as little sleep as possible, then going back and starting it the next day all over again. And, you know, the body, of course, I'm at that time, my early 20s. So I'm able to bounce back very quickly and take maybe a 15-minute nap, and I'm good. And now that I'm in my 40s now, those days are no. Good night sleep is a thing that I'm looking forward to. Me personally, I know a lot of first responders around my age are looking for the same thing. So October 1st. The book will be here. I will order my copy. Is there any way, where would you, if for those that are listening, if those who wanted to get their copy or they wanted to learn more about you or your studies or your teachings or maybe attend a training or something, what would you suggest? How would they get a hold of you or find their copies or anything? You know where I'm going, any websites or anything like that?
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Leah Kaylor. It's like Taylor with a K. And you can find me, my website is drleahkaylor.com. You can find me on Instagram. I do have some social media. And yeah, you can find me on those various different places. And so the book will be on my website, but it will also be available on Amazon as well when the time comes. So yeah, you can find me at those various different places. And then yes, if there are any talks that I'm giving or webinars or anything like that, you'll see me start announcing things like that on social media. So that's where you can find me and follow me.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that that's in the comment section, and that'll be in the description box as this is airing. So therefore, you don't have to go far, ladies and gentlemen, that you'll be able to click on it right then and there. Dr. Kaylor, it was my pleasure to have a conversation with you. Thank you for making yourself available. But through the course of conversation, I may have forgot to ask you a question, or I may have jogged your memory on something else that you may have wanted to touch on. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us? Right now, the floor is yours.
The last thing that I want to say is when it comes to obstructive sleep apnea, this is something that a lot of people don't know about, or maybe maybe know about, but don't take it very seriously. And I think that this is worth highlighting just in a few short minutes. So I think a lot of us think about obstructive sleep apnea with, maybe someone who's overweight or like this kind of chainsaw snoring, but it doesn't necessarily have to look like that. A lot of times it looks like daytime sleepiness. So falling asleep when you're in a meeting, or, maybe falling asleep behind the wheel. It may look like a lot of different things, but we kind of have this stereotypical portrayal of what it looks like. And so if you're someone who thinks, oh my gosh, I couldn't possibly have obstructive sleep apnea because I'm young and I'm fit and I'm not severely overweight. No, this actually could potentially be something that's interfering with your sleep. And so, like I mentioned, if you're doing the various different things on the bottom rungs of the pyramid and you're still not seeing results after a few weeks, it may be time to go and ask your provider for a polysomnography, which is just a fancy word for a sleep study, because this can tell you what's happening. And so just to give you an idea, obstructive sleep apnea is whenever we are laying down for bed and the airway, the muscles in the airway and the throat relax. And so they're normally open, air can flow through, but whenever they are relaxed, and especially if we have alcohol or sedatives on board, it can very much relax. And so when the airway narrows, that's where we hear snoring, the worsening, the narrowing of the airway. Wow. But for people with obstructive sleep apnea, they may also have complete closures of the airway. So what happens essentially is we're not getting any oxygen. We need oxygen. The brain starts to panic, goes into this fight or flight mode, and then it wakes up the person, whether it's what we call a micro arousal, which you wouldn't remember that, but it's enough to open up the airway. So whenever it comes to obstructive sleep apnea, we measure how severe, mild, moderate, or severe, that a person has obstructive sleep apnea by how many of those events they have per night. So imagine, someone who has mild obstructive sleep apnea, maybe they have 10 of those events a night. Well, it may be hard to conceptualize that or kind of wrap your brain around it, but imagine that you went to bed at 11 p.m. So from 11 p.m. to 12 p.m., I come into your room and I try and wake you up 10 times during that hour-long period. That's pretty freaking annoying, whether you actually wake all the way up or just kind of are pulled out of your sleep cycles.
Right.
But then imagine I do it again from midnight to 1. I try and wake you up 10 times. And then again from 1 to 2, all the way up until when you wake up. So I want people to really wrap their head around how incredibly disruptive that can be, because untreated obstructive sleep apnea is very much tied to a lot of health problems, which could potentially look like erectile dysfunction. It could look like increased risk of cardiovascular issues. It could look like increased risk for stroke, many, many, many other things, but just a few to throw out there that, hey, if you have obstructive sleep apnea, and whether you are undiagnosed or some people out there know that they have it and they don't like their CPAP machine, it's absolutely vital that you take action on this, because it can vastly change your health span and the years that you live in good life if you're not treating and taking care of this. So I just want to throw that out there as a public service announcement.
Thank you for sharing that. Health is wealth. And of course, with cortisol being affected, with livelihood being affected, with the health span, the health of yourself, mentally, physically being affected. Sleep is very, very important for mental health, for health, period. And I'm glad that I'm glad this is your field of study. I was very eager for this interview, just for the simple facts of the details and the intricacies that many of us don't even know about, or how complex it may be, or how complex we may perceive it, to how simple you just explained it to someone dumb like me, where I can visualize it as you're saying it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. As you can tell, I love talking about sleep. So yeah, I'm just excited to be able to share this knowledge with folks and share even more in the book, If Sleep Were a Drug.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you for making yourself available and coming on the show. I can't wait to get my copy of the book, and we're going to make sure it gets posted here on this podcast. Thank you, Dr. Kaylor, for coming on here and blessing the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, make sure you guys get a copy of this. Tag, like, and share with your friends, because this is important, not only just for first responders, but for everyone, because sleep is very important. We're going to go to sleep anyway, so you might as well get the best sleep that you can. Make sure you guys tune in, tag, like, and share. We'll see you 10-4 over and out. Have a good one. Get that in focus there. See, that was a good conversation. That was a good interview. I like how I got the 10-4 over and out. But we talked about a lot. I hope you guys learned a lot. I learned a lot about the placebo effect from melatonin having disrupted sleep apnea, and it's just like being interrupted 10 times during the hour for every hour that you sleep. So you wake up tired and you may not even remember it. A lot of things I learned just from that interview. Got to visualize it. She broke it down, made it very understandable to the basic levels as you can. So make sure you guys get a copy of it, especially first responders, law enforcement officers, because sleep deprivation can help lower the suicide rate. I hate to say that because our numbers are high. Well, I'm happy to say that may be a factor. It could be a factor to lower that. It can help with mental illnesses. It can help with traffic deaths. Working that midnight shift. I know I've fallen guilty of seeing the black dog run across the roadway on a midnight shift, and then mysteriously you look around and there's nothing there, and that's when it's time to pull over, take a break, or break up the OODA loop, get that tunnel vision out of there. Chronic pain, we all know about the chronic pain, the pain in our lower lumbar, our back area from carrying the duty vest or the duty belt, Alzheimer's, dementia, obesity, heart disease. We know what it is. We talk about the causes and effects of it, but learn more about it and learn how you can combat this so you can be the healthiest person you can be, the healthiest first responder you can be. So therefore, you still have a life after this job, because so many things to do in this life. You want to be able to make sure that you accomplish it all. So shout out to Dr. Leah Kaylor for coming on the show. Let me get these banners going. I forgot about that. I'm sorry. Thank you for coming on the show and blessing us. Make sure you guys order your copy of the book, If Sleep Were a Drug. Get this on the screen. And make sure you guys tag, like, share, and subscribe. This is Black and Blue, the podcast just for you, where we go live weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we go live with the first responder or law enforcement officer, whether they're rookie season or retiree. We talk about their trainings, their experiences, and their publications. And we definitely didn't fall short today. So you guys take care of each other. We'll see you again. 10-4, over and out.
Black as you is, it's a whole lot of blue still shining through.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Sergeant Be Safe is inviting you to watch this exciting and fun podcast, Black and Blue. It airs weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's just for you. When we go live with a dynamic law enforcement officer or first responder, whether they're rookie, season, or retiree. We talk about their trainings, experiences, and their publications. We've had tremendous guests already, and we have many, many more tremendous guests coming down the pipeline. You want to subscribe.
Sergeant Be Safe is here.
Black and Blue is on various podcasts, especially on YouTube, so make sure you guys subscribe. And don't forget about me, Sergeant Be Safe. I have my own channel too, so make sure you subscribe to that as well. We have many adventures, learning experiences, and we have fun while we do it. You guys don't want to miss it. Not only with the special guest that's being featured, you'll see video skits of me and the bad guys, Rob You Blind, Misdemeanor, Treacherous Tony, Chance Wilder, aka Wild Chance, and Sapphire Steel. And that's your tip of the day. get you on your way.
I'm not a bad cop.
I never once said you were. It would be real simple if the problem was bad cops. It ain't.